Okay, so we are live now. Just to continue with Robert's presentation, so this is ALSpy.exe, and I have in the same folder paste the ALSpy plugin just to show you when it doesn't crash what you can have. So if I start ALSpy, it will start with all the previous assemblies that I had already had a look to. What you can simply do, for example, if I go to my, this is the executable of the application that I will show you in a few minutes. I just drag and drop in ALSpy. It will open in ALSpy, and if originally ALSpy is set to C#, so I can have a quick look at, for example, my Windows Form code in the C# way. And so I have a button on it, add button on it, so I can have a look at the code in C#. But in fact, that code has been written in X#. But as it compiled in AL code, ALSpy is able to present you that code in C#. But yeah, it would be really cool if you could have a look at the code in C#. So now that I have placed my add-in DLL in the same folder as the ALSpy.exe, I'm able to view the code with our X# syntax. So if I go back to my button add button, I have it in X#, let's say, language. It means that you are in X# with the the FoxPro dialect. You want to extend your application with something that does exist in C#, because you have searched on Google and you have found dozens of samples on Stack Overflow or whatever site you want, but it's always written in C#. What you can do is start Visual Studio in C#, start a, let's say, console application, copy the sample from Stack Overflow into that C# application and build it. After it builds, you have some AL code. You can now drag that code, that compile code, to ALSpy, and then you have the same source code, but in X#. So if you want to get rid of all these C# samples that you find, and you want to have them in your application, but in your language, ALSpy might be a tool that will convert the generated code from C# to AL, and then we will process the other way from AL to X# syntax. Okay? So that's one, I think, of the interesting usage that you can do from ALSpy. But you can also, as you can review all assemblies, you can, for example, go to Windows Form and have a look, let's say, at the button class. This is the way Microsoft has implemented their button class in the Windows Form. And you are able to review the code in X#. But I'm sure that Microsoft didn't write that code in X#. Yeah, but I can view the code in the X# dialect. Okay, now
I heard a question from someone.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if they could see this and the dot instead of self and a colon? I'm bugging it now.
Yeah, we can have a, let's say, a setting somewhere
Yeah.
to change that. But forgive me, I think that it's not on the top of my list. So what I want to show you is I have a WinForm application. Okay, so this is a form with a list view. So this is a standard Windows Form list view. A list view is what you have. I don't know if you have list view in FoxPro. You know, it's not only a,
Grid.
yeah, but it's not only a grid. A list view is something that you can change the shape. That's what you have in the Explorer when you switch from detail to big icons, small icons. You know, this is a list view. So what we have here is a list view that has been placed in detail mode. So we have a kind of grid. Okay, so I have different columns and I have several buttons on it. What I'm doing here is I will go to what's happening in the file open menu. What I'm doing here is that I'm using a MySQL connection. I didn't use the Microsoft SQL just to provide you another kind of sample, you know. So what I have on my machine currently, I have Apache PHP MySQL server that is running, and I'm able to access the MySQL server through the PHP MySQL admin PHP application. What I will do is that I will query that MySQL server through my Xsharp application. And in order to do that, I'm making it the hard way because I want to see all the steps. So I have a MySQL connection string builder in which I indicate what is the IP of the server, what is the name of the database, what is the user ID and the password in order to access that SQL server. And then I have the MySQL connection, and then I create some commands in order to query that MySQL server. Okay, and then with this information, I will feed my list view, my WinForm list view application. Okay, so let's see. In the PHP that I have here, this is a simple server with an Xsharp database in which I have a contact table, and in the contact table I have several records. So we have here all the members of the dev team. So what I will do is I will select all the contacts from this data table. So I first file open. So if I open, I create the connection builder, make the connection, then select all the contacts, and then I enumerate all the contacts and fill the list view with that information. So now I can open a child window in order to add somebody else in the dev team.
Yeah, who are we going to add to the dev team today?
So do we have a volunteer? Oh yeah, Eric. Okay, let's go. So is it? Yeah. Okay.
And it's going to be Eric at xsharp.eu.
Okay. Okay, so I put it in my list view, but in fact, if I'm not too wrong, I might find Eric somewhere. It is refreshing, and it is a bit slow, and I don't know why.
Did you commit it already?
Yeah.
Guys, I think a higher God has decided that Eric is not accepted in the dev team. I'm not sure what kind of, maybe we're still negotiating the contract.
Okay, so. Okay, that's a good sample because it doesn't work. Come on. I don't understand what's wrong. Yeah, wake up. Okay.
He is accepted.
Hooray! Eric is now part of the dev team. Right.
Great.
Okay, so you see that there is no magic in there. I'm just using standard SQL command and SQL connection and everything in my Windows Form application. Okay.
Maybe to apply this to the Fox Pro, you guys have a select statement, select command in your language, and an update and an append. But you cannot. That's based on the DBX and the database container. You can also have SQL Connect or SQL String Connect and SQL Exact. Now, the framework has all the support for how to do that. All we have to do is, let's take SQL Server as an example. Your SQL Connect returns a numeric handle. So we take a connection object, just like what Fabrice has, stored somewhere, let's say in an array, probably not, but that's for sake of example, and say the first element in the array is number 1, so we return your number 1. You do a SQL Exact, we deposit number 1, and then we create a command object, we execute, and it returns something, and that's what you will get from your SQL Exact function. So that's how we're going to implement things. No magic, we will use whatever is in the framework, and there's a lot in the framework. Now, our first attempt there will be to do it ODBC, so not MySQL or not SQL client or whatever. So we'll do ODBC because then your connection strings will work. But we will, of course, also give you then, in a later iteration, direct access to either MySQL or Oracle or SQL or you name it. So that's the idea that we have. We use things that are in the framework, like Fabrice just shows, and we give it to you. Of course, if you're in a hurry and you can't wait for us, it's all in the framework. There are literally thousands and thousands of examples on the web how to do it. So if this is vital to you to connect to something and we haven't provided it, go to the web, look for an example, or go to our forum and ask around because it's in there. We don't have to code it, we will code it to make it code compatible, but you will have more power and more ability, more strength basically if you use it directly, because then you can also use the parameters the way Microsoft or Oracle or MySQL wants to have them. So by going to .NET, you get all this for free, or maybe you have to buy a provider from one of the vendors, but the technology you get for free. Now you have it running on another machine now? Or?
Yeah, I can, but I've closed CD guy. I've closed my. Should I show that running on Linux?
No, definitely in Linux. One of the samples he has, he drags the whole app with MySQL to Linux, and it works then too. So he crosses from his VM over IP to his desktop, and he talks MySQL. So by opening it, doing it with .NET, you can cross boundaries. That's, I think it's, and we did a lot of work for that, didn't we?
Yeah, it was so difficult. Okay. What I was willing to show you next is WPF. Maybe. Yeah. Do you allow me to show?
Yeah, I'm just
WPF.
We want to give me the last 15 minutes at least, so we have some things to discuss from my machine, but you continue.
So if you want to go WPF, that's another piece of cake, because the definition of Windows is not done in a source code. That's the way Windows Form run. In fact, a form is in source code, and the designer will analyze the source code in order to show you the same image that you have code. In WPF, we have something which is more like HTML. So there is a language with a markup language, which is called XAML. XAML, where you can specify element that you want to put on your window. So you can do XAML with no fancy, sexy stuff. For example, this window is a basic standard WPF window, and it really looks like a standard Windows Form window, because I just put the standard code on it. I put no styling, no fancy stuff. Okay. So if we have a quick look, I think it is somewhere there. Or did I? Yeah. So if I show you this window, it looks like, so these are Visual Studio debugger tools for WPF in order to check what's happening to controls. So this black box does not exist. So it looks like really a standard window form. What I can do, I will show you. What I can do is I can set some styling, and you see that the styling that I have is set for all the text box that I have in the current window, which means that all the text blocks that are here in this window will receive this styling. Instead of going to one text block, change the font, the other text block, change the font, and so on, I can set the text block, the style for all the text box that I have in the window. So if I check what's happening here.
Yeah, it's in the debugger menu of the studio.
Oh.
Click on the very bottom. The little black window, just click on the very bottom.
Oh yeah, thank you. So you see that I have set some styling to all the text blocks, but I can also override some of the styling. So per default, I have a font size which is 26, but for this particular one, I set the font size to 16. So I can set a default style and then override that default style with new stuff. So what I can do if I want to go a little bit further is that I can set what they call gradients, so I can provide some effects to the text, the way the text is shown in the window, which is what I have here. So I have set a brush and some. It doesn't really. On the screen, it is not really clear. I don't know if you have it with the beamer, but in fact, the color is slow. It is more dark on top, and it gets clearer in the bottom of the text due to the gradient brush that I'm using in the text rendering. But again, it's not a matter of code. It's a matter of style, right? I can continue? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, the original idea for Microsoft was, and I say on purpose, original idea that you could take your solution and give it to a graphical designer, and they have a special tool called Blend, and they could go in there in Blend and go crazy on your forms, and they would not have a source code editor to touch your source, and as long as they didn't touch the names of the controls, it would still run in your code, even though they changed the order of the controls, etc., because the binding would be done by name. From what I see in the field, almost nobody uses that. What we do use is styling, like Fabrice says, and you can also put styles, but just I'm now probably getting ahead of you, outside of a form.
That's this sample is, you have seen previously that the styling was in the window definition. What I'm doing here is that I'm putting the styling in an external, what I call dictionary of XAML styling element. So I can have a styling that apply to my whole application. And instead of replicating that styling in each window, I can put that in a central XAML file and use that definition in all the windows of my application, which means that if I want to have a gray background for all the windows, I just have to change that in the dictionary. If I have a new client that wants to have a red background of all the windows, okay, let's go to the dictionary and change the styling in the dictionary, and done. Okay.
It's like the CSS that you use on your web page.
Yeah.
Basically. But don't tell your boss that it's so easy, because you have to go through all the forms, right, to change the background color. So keep it quiet.
So I have again changed the styling of my window, but now it does not come from the window, but it comes from the outside. It comes from the dictionary. Now we can even go a little bit further, because I can mix the style and my code. And you see that I have a list box, and that list box has a binding source, and that binding source, so I will provide some data to that to this list box through a resource which is called my photos. In French, it sounds better. And if I go to the dictionary, I have the same name, which points to a local photo list. And in fact, this is something that I have in a code. If I go to yes, I have to make it that way. Sorry, where is it? Don't remember where I put. Oh no, it is here. I have the photo list class, which is an observable collection of photo, and a photo is just on top. It is a source. In fact, it is a path to a picture. Okay, so this is a file path to a picture. So what I have here, I provide by styling, by binding my list box to a, let's say, a kind of array. I set that this list box will be filled with that kind of array, and that array contains source path, file path, right?
Yeah, and just to point you out, this is now not the FoxPro type class definition.
Yeah.
Don't see define class, but this is our original, what we call core class definition. So you will see that we have private fields here. Private source string declares a field, not a property. Public property source is how we expose it to the world. And with get and get, we say that it's only readable, so it's a read-only property.
It's a little bit like what you have in FoxPro with class, where you can have a function with an underscore access, or which is a getter, or you can have a function underscore assign, which is a setter. And we have in the property keyword, we have get, and we have set and set. So if you provide both, your property is read or writeable, and if you provide just the getter, it is read-only property. Just like if I was providing only the underscore access function.
And those of you who have coded C# will have seen that they have also a shorter version where you can do the arrow, or in our case, you can do everything on one line. So you can do property source as string get underscore source. But Fabrice did it now for educational purposes.
The teacher's way, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And what I also want to emphasize, you see a constructor over here. This is also something that you guys don't know. Eric mentioned it briefly in his session. Constructor is a bit like your init method. It's the first code that gets called when a class is created. And you can have more than one constructor on a class if you do it in R syntax. So, and that's called overloading. And you can have a constructor that takes a string, but for example, you could also have a constructor that takes a file info object. That's something in the framework. And so you could have multiple, and you do not have to do var type checks in your code there, because you know you're going to get a string or the file info object.
So if I run my application, what's happening is that the list box is filled with a collection, a list, an array. I don't know what is the right word to use, of file paths. Okay, so we have a list of text, which is something that is usual. Okay, what is interesting here is if I go to the latest version of the window, it's getting a little bit more complex, but I will try to make it simpler. What I have here is I'm still using the binding to my photos, which is a photo list, but I have some styling on top of it. And this styling, you see that I have an item template, which means that in each item of the list box, for each item of the list box, which is currently a string, I can set a style. So, for example, write it in bold or underline or change the color or something like that. But I can even go further, because what I can see, because I know it, is that each image is, each line is a file path. So it is an image. And what I can do, I can, if I will go to the second dictionary. I think it is this one. Yes. What I'm doing here, in fact, is that I will transform. This is the item. And in the item, what I'm using, I'm having an image. So what you will have is, instead of showing the file path, even if you fill the list box with the list of the file paths, what I will show you in the list box is the image itself. So it means that on the code size, you are manipulating file paths, but on the user side, you are showing the image itself. And this is XAML WPF that will manage the fact to read the file and put it on screen. And as it is a list box, it will appear in a list box. So I will have a list box of images instead of a list box of file paths. And just for fun, I have added some what they call event trigger. And I have here two event trigger. One is mouse enter, so when the mouse moves on the image, sorry, and the other one, which is when the mouse cursor will leave the image. And you see that I'm using some animation with a duration. Okay, I will try just to show you how it can be. Remember, what we had previously was a list of file paths, right? By using this very nice stuff of styling and interaction, what I have now is the same list box with the same content, but it is presented in the image way, not in the text way. So I can move in my list box, okay, and I can over an image, so I will have a kind of zoom when I mouse enter the image, and when I leave, I go back to the original size, but by setting the duration, I can make it faster or slower. That's why you have different effects depending on when you are leaving or entering the image. Okay? And in fact, I have provided some code to enumerate the list, get the file path, but all the rest, all the fancy stuff is styling. And if you want to investigate that part of WPF, yeah, honestly, that's another work. You really will need some training for that, because it's, yeah, I've tried to show you that is a sample that is sexy, fun, and tried to explain how it works. But if you want to apply that kind of stuff in all your application, yes, that's a job.
But the good thing is you don't need C# anymore.
No.
You can do it in your own favorite language, and of course, XAML a bit.
Yeah. Okay?
Yeah.
Any question?
Can we
Tell me.
shall we swap again, because I want to show some more stuff Foxborough related, and I want to open a discussion.
Don't you want me to show my...
Okay, he has one more thing.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so please, be nice with me. Uh, this is something that I started yesterday after our presentation and after some discussion. So currently it's a little bit dirty and some parts are hard-coded directly, but what I'm trying to do is to make it data-driven. So most of the elements.
What are you showing? We have no idea. Or are you not gonna tell us what you're showing?
Yeah. If you see, you might recognize the beginning of the item name, which is SCX, which seems to be, as far as I understood, the extension of your form definition in FoxPro, which is a DBF. And in that DBF, you have several fields, and like properties, object name, method, parent. Okay. This tool is the very beginning version of, let's say, transportation, translation, migration. I don't know what would be the right word for that. What it does, it reads the FoxPro definition of the window, and then I apply some rules on it. So currently you see the rules are hard-coded in the source, but my idea is that all these rules could be external files. So we can add more rules into the processing. I have different kind of rules. One to translate properties. For example, you have caption and Windows Form as text. So this is why we have caption, and that will correspond to text. You are using top, left, width, height that will disappear in the end, but previously they will be used in order to create a location object and a size object, which is how a Windows Form is placing the element in the form, and so on. I won't enter too many in the details. So what I have done, don't forget, I'm a Visual Studio, Visual Object developer. I'm not a FoxPro developer. So forgive me if you find it ugly. I just started with a simple form, and I have, let's say, come on, it behaves strangely. I think it don't really like my screen definition.
You need advanced Visual FoxPro. I heard yesterday.
Oh, okay. So I have a text. I have a simple checkbox on it, and two buttons. Yeah. Okay. So I will save that, and I will close FoxPro just to be sure that the SCX file isn't used anymore. Maybe if I just close the designer, it will close the. Yeah. Okay. So I close the designer, and I run my tool. My tool I will search the SCX file. I already know where it is because I've done that just before. And if I open the SCX file, I will find that I have what I call a high-level item, which is a form. And in that form, I have 4 childs, which are a command, a check, a text, and another command. That's it seems to be the history. How to say that? The order in which I place the element on the form. Okay, and what I can do is run my tool with all the rules in order to export. So again, currently the export is in a fixed folder. If I have a look at what is exported, it is a kind of a set of Windows Form control with some, after changing the types by respecting the rules. Okay, so what does it do? If I open it is already there. Let's remove the form. Okay, this is a basic X# Windows Form application, right? What I will do is I will add an existing item. The form isn't there, so what I will do is search my form and drop it. Oh, it doesn't work. Maybe I will proceed another way. I will copy, paste. Okay, the form is here. So I add the form to my Visual Studio and small project. So it does appear. So it seems that Visual Studio has already recognized it as a form because Visual Studio has already changed the icon. This is not an X# icon, but this is a form. So it means that Visual Studio has already recognized Robert. Visual Studio is Robert there.
Nothing is for free in Visual Studio.
Yeah. So what's happening if I double click on, I hope it won't crash. Okay, I may have some trouble with the resizing of my form because in fact, I'm not saving the property of the form. Currently, I'm just saving and translating the property of the control, the childs on it. But the process will be the same. So at least now, for simple form with standard FoxPro control, I'm able to translate this form to definition, this form definition, to the same definition in Windows Form. The next step will be retrieve the event handling that you have in FoxPro and try as much as I can to provide the same kind of auto transform of the event handling with the same with the same set of rules, you know, that a click is something else maybe in Windows Form and so on.
Okay, can I take over?
Yeah.
Because some people have to catch a train or a plane.
This tool will be, has the other tool, it will be free and available as source on GitHub, which means that if you want, again, I'm just a visual object developer. So if you want to change the way it works, if you want to extend it, if you want to move, yeah, go get it, fork it, and request some changes, and you're more than welcome. That's the very first version, so forgive me. Yep.
Quick change now. If you still want to grab something, I need 1 minute or 2 minutes, set up again. Unfortunately, we have only one cable.
And I stop the recording.